My mom's text hit like a bomb. "We changed the locks. You're not welcome home." I fired back. "Think you're tough? We'll see in court, lol." 2 days later, their lawyer's frantic email landed. "Urgent issue. Call now." What secret were they desperate to hide? I was riding high, my heels clicking against the polished concrete floor of our Seattle ad agency's conference room, when the world I thought I knew shattered. At 29, Claire Donovan, was the youngest creative director at Vantage Creative, and I'd just nailed a $10 million 0-cents campaign pitch for a tech giant that could cement my career. My team was buzzing, laptops snapping shut, coffee cups clinking in a toast to our victory. I was halfway through a celebratory text to my best friend Zoe when my phone vibrated with a message that stopped my heart. "We've changed the locks. You're no longer welcome in our family's home." The words glowed on the screen, sent from my mother, Ellen Donovan. My thumb froze mid-scratch and the room's chatter faded to a dull hum. I read it again, then a third time, as if repetition could rewrite the cruelty. My hands trembled, and I felt the blood drain from my face. The historic Craftsman House in Capitol Hill, the one my grandmother Vivian Harper left me in her will, was mine, and now my own parents were stealing it from me. I sank into a chair, the leather creaking under me, and stared at the screen. The house wasn't just wood and glass. It was my sanctuary, my childhood refuge, the place where I'd learned to paint under Vivian's gentle guidance, where her stories of our family's century-long Seattle roots had shaped me. It was worth $1,500,000. 0 cents in today's market, sure, but to me it was priceless. And my parents had locked me out like some unwanted tenant. I typed back, fingers shaking with rage. "You think you can steal my home? Let's see how brave you are in court." I hit send, my defiance a thin mask over the panic clawing at my chest. Inside, I was crumbling, my world unraveling faster than I could catch the threads. How could they do this? My mother, with her perfect smile and her endless critiques. My father, David, who taught me to ride a bike in that very How could they betray me so completely? I grew up in Seattle, in a family I thought was normal. Not storybook perfect, but solid. My parents, Ellen and David, were the kind of middle-class couple you'd see at a TTA meeting or cheering at my soccer games. Mom was a high school history teacher, always grading papers at the kitchen table, her glasses slipping down her nose. Dad ran a small accounting firm, his office cluttered with tax forms and coffee mugs. My younger sister Mia and I bickered over who got the last slice of pizza, but shared secrets under the blankets during summer storms. We had cozy dinners most nights, trading stories over Mom's overcooked lasagna, and every July we'd pile into the minivan for a week at the San Juan Islands, where Dad would burn marshmallows and Mom would complain about sand in her shoes. At the heart of our family was my grandmother, Vivian Harper. She lived in that Capitol Hill Craftsman, a century-old gem with stained glass windows and a wraparound porch that creaked under your feet. It had been in our family for 4 generations, each board holding a story. Vivian was my confidant, my cheerleader, the one who'd slip me an extra cookie when Mom wasn't looking. Her house was where we celebrated every Thanksgiving, where I'd curl up in her attic studio, paintbrush in hand while she told me tales of her youth in the 1940s, of jazz clubs and wartime ration books. "This house is alive, Claire," she'd say, her eyes twinkling. "It's our family's soul. You understand that." I did. More than she could have known. That house was my escape from Mom's relentless perfectionism, from her sighs when my grades dipped or my skirt wasn't ironed. Vivian saw me, really saw me, in a way my parents never did. When I was 16 and Mom grounded me for sneaking out to a concert, Vivian let me hide in her guest room, slipping me a sketchbook and whispering, "Your spirit's too big for their rules, darling." When Vivian passed away last year at 94, it felt like the ground shifted beneath us. The funeral was a blur of black dresses and whispered condolences, the air heavy with grief. A month later, at the reading of her will, everything changed. We gathered in a sterile law office downtown, the kind with fake plants and too much air conditioning. The attorney, a gray-haired man with a slow drawl, read Vivian's words. To my granddaughter, Claire Donovan, I leave my home at 1427 Olive Street in trust that she will preserve its history and spirit. A letter, written in Vivian's elegant cursive, explained her choice. Claire sees beyond the walls to the stories they hold. She will honor our family's legacy. The room went silent, then erupted. My mother's face turned to stone, her lips a thin line. This is a mistake, she snapped, her voice tight. Vivian wasn't herself at the end. My father's hand clenched the armrest, his knuckles white. Mia, barely 25, looked confused, her eyes darting between our parents. They'd expected the house to be sold, the proceeds split among us, or at least left to them as Vivian's only children, but Vivian had chosen me. Me, the artsy dreamer who'd rather paint than balance a checkbook. The will was airtight, witnessed, notarized, and backed by a doctor's note confirming Vivian's sound mind. My parents' shock hardened into resentment, their eyes boring into me like I'd stolen something. I tried to smooth things over the next day, meeting them at a coffee shop near Pike Place Market. Nothing has to change, I said, stirring my latte nervously. We can still have family gatherings at the house. I just want to honor Vivian's wishes. Mom's smile was brittle, her voice clipped. You don't understand what you're taking, Claire. Dad just stared out the window, silent. Zoe, my best friend since college, saw through their facade. We were sprawled on her couch that night, a bottle of Pinot Noir between us. Your mom's obsessed with control, she said, twirling a strand of her pink hair. That house is a gold mine in this market. $1,500,000, 0 cents easy. They won't let this go. I laughed it off, sipping my wine. They're my parents, Zoe. They're just grieving. They'll come around. But her words stuck, a splinter I couldn't pull out. I moved into the house a month later, leaving my cramped Belltown apartment for Vivian's sprawling rooms. The place needed work. Creaky floors, ancient plumbing, but its charm was undeniable. I hired contractors to preserve the craftsman details, the oak wainscoting, the built-in bookshelves, the leaded windows that caught the morning light. I poured my savings into it, every dollar a promise to Vivian. Mom visited once, her eyes narrowing at the new pendant lights in the kitchen. Vivian would hate these, she said, running her fingers over the polished brass. You're erasing her. I bit my tongue, reminding myself she was still mourning. For a few months, things were tense but manageable. I invited my family over for Sunday dinners, though Mom found fault with everything. The paint color in the dining room, the modern rug in the hall. Vivian kept this house perfect for decades, she'd say, her tone sharp. Mia tried to play peacemaker, pulling me aside after one awkward meal. Mom's just struggling with change, she said, her voice soft. Dad, too. They had retirement plans tied to selling this place. I nodded, but stood firm. Vivian wanted me to keep it in the family, Mia. I'm doing what she asked. Then came my big idea, turning the house's grand living room into a community art space. Seattle's art scene was thriving, but young artists struggled to find affordable venues. The room, with its high ceilings and natural light, was perfect for curated exhibitions. It'd bring in enough income to maintain the aging house while honoring Vivian's love for creativity. I shared the plan at a family dinner 2 weeks ago, expecting pushback, but not the explosion that followed. Dad slammed his fork down, his face red. You're turning our legacy into a circus for strangers. Mom pushed her plate away, her eyes blazing. You'll ruin this neighborhood, Claire. Traffic, noise, random people tramping through. Is that what you want? I stayed calm, explaining I'd checked with the city. It's legal under the historic property exemption. Small scale, by appointment only, maybe 10 visitors a week, but they wouldn't hear it. The argument escalated, voices rising until Dad threw up his hands. Enough. It's your house, Claire. If you want to make stupid decisions, that's on you. I thought it was reluctant acceptance. I was wrong. Last week, I flew to San Francisco for that $10 million 0-cents pitch. It was a make-or-break moment for my career, and I delivered, wowing the client with storyboards and data-driven insights. I was still buzzing when my red-eye landed back in Seattle at dawn. I texted Zoe from the airport. Can't wait to crash in my own bed. And Uber dropped me at the house, and I dragged my suitcase up the porch steps, the familiar creak under my boots grounding me. But when my key wouldn't turn in the lock, I frowned. The door was old, sometimes stubborn, but after 3 tries I knew something was wrong. Then I saw it, a shiny new deadbolt glinting in the morning light. My heart started pounding. I called Mom. No answer. Dad's phone went straight to voicemail. I was about to try Mia when my phone buzzed with another text from Mom. This house belongs to the family, not you. Leave or you'll regret it. I stared at the screen, disbelief giving way to fury. My fingers shook as I typed back. You think this scares me? You're messing with the wrong person. But the bravado was hollow, standing on the porch of my own house. My house. I felt like the air had been sucked from my lungs. Then I noticed the trash bags. 4 black hefty bags, stuffed and tied, were piled by the hydrangeas like garbage waiting for pickup. I tore one open and found my clothes, wrinkled and shoved in carelessly. Another held my toiletries, my toothbrush tangled with a half-empty shampoo bottle. The third had my sketchbooks, their pages bent, and the fourth, my heart stopped, held my work laptop, the one with sensitive client files. I powered it on, praying, but several folders were gone, including drafts for the San Francisco campaign. My stomach churned. This wasn't just personal. They were sabotaging my career. I called Mia, my voice shaking. Did you know about this? She hesitated, then said, About what? I told her everything. The locks, the bags, the laptop. There was a long pause. Oh, Claire, I'm sorry. I didn't know they'd go this far. Where are they? I demanded. Whidbey Island for the weekend, she said. They won't be back till Sunday. I pressed her. Mia, do you have a key? Can you let me in? Another pause. I don't, Claire, and even if I did, I can't get in the middle of this. They're so upset about your art space idea. I hung up, her words a fresh cut. Not just my parents, but my sister, too, had abandoned me. As I sat on the porch steps, guarding my bags like a refugee, a black SUV slowed across the street. The driver, a man in a dark jacket, stared at me through tinted windows. I froze, my pulse racing. When I reached for my phone, he gunned the engine and sped off, tires screeching. Was he watching me? Was this connected to my parents? Paranoia crept in, cold and sharp. I called Zoe, my voice cracking as I explained. I'm coming to get you, she said, no hesitation. You're staying with me. While I waited, every passing car made me flinch, half expecting the SUV to return. When Zoe's beat-up Subaru pulled up, I nearly cried with relief. She helped me load the bags, muttering, This is insane, Claire, they can't legally do this. I nodded, numb. But they did. At Zoe's tiny Fremont apartment, I collapsed on her couch, the springs digging into my back. She poured us whiskey, her eyes blazing. Your parents are trying to break you. This isn't just about the house, it's about control. I sipped the burning liquid, staring at the ceiling. What do I do, Zoe? That's my home, my grandmother's legacy. She leaned forward, fierce. You fight, you get a lawyer, and you take it back. But the house wasn't my only worry. The next morning, my boss, Greg, called me into his office. He'd been thrilled about the San Francisco win, but now his face was grim. Claire, I'm hearing rumors about some family drama. Clients are asking questions. You need to keep this out of work, or that $10 million 0 cents account could slip. My throat tightened. It's under control, I lied, but the pressure was crushing. My parents weren't just stealing my home, they were threatening my career. That afternoon, I took stock of my bags and realized what was missing. Vivian's sapphire necklace, a family heirloom she'd promised me, the original copy of her will, and her leather-bound journal, filled with sketches and notes about the house's history. These weren't oversights. My parents had kept them deliberately, stripping me of proof and memory. I felt violated, like they'd reached into my soul and torn out pieces. Then came the second scare. Zoe and I drove to the house to check on it, and as I approached the back door, I smelled gas. My skin prickled. Inside, the kitchen stove's valve was open, hissing softly. I shut it off, heart pounding, and called a technician. He confirmed it had been tampered with. A spark could have blown the place sky high. "You're lucky," he said, but luck felt like a lie. Was this an accident, or had someone, my parents, wanted me dead? Couldn't shake the memory of the first near miss weeks earlier when I'd been inspecting the house's foundation with a contractor. A heavy beam had slipped from its mooring, crashing inches from my head. The contractor had called it shoddy work, but Zoe's words echoed. "Your parents know contractors. This feels intentional." 2 accidents in a month. My trust in coincidence was eroding fast. By Monday, I was a wreck. But I had a plan. I hired Rachel Muayon, a property law shark with a reputation for dismantling bullies. Her office, a sleek downtown loft, was lined with awards and photos of her shaking hands with Seattle's elite. She listened as I poured out the story, her pen scratching notes. "This is textbook self-help eviction," she said, her voice calm but steel-edged, illegal as hell. "We'll file an emergency injunction to get you back in. But Claire, be ready. This will get ugly. Your parents aren't playing." Ugly didn't begin to cover it. That evening, I opened X and found a thread from my mother, tagged with my name. "Heartbroken that my daughter would desecrate our family's historic home for profit," it began, spinning a tale of me as a greedy opportunist turning Vivian's legacy into a tacky art gallery. It had hundreds of retweets, many from Seattle's preservationist crowd, who chimed in with, "Shame on her," and "Save our heritage." My chest tightened. This wasn't just a family fight, it was a public execution. Neighbors I'd known for years started avoiding me. A handwritten note appeared on Zoe's doorstep. "You're not welcome in Capitol Hill." My father's voicemails escalated, his voice cold and menacing. "You're making a mistake, Claire. Drop this lawyer nonsense or you'll lose more than the house." Each message was a knife, twisting deeper. Relatives piled on. Aunt Linda emailed, calling me selfish. Cousins blocked me online. Only Vivian's cousin, Margaret Wells, reached out, her voice kind but cryptic. "Vivian knew they'd try this, Claire. Stay strong." Then Mia dropped a bombshell. She met me for coffee looking guilty and exhausted. "They're planning to sell the house," she blurted, "to a developer for $3 million. 0 cents. They want to tear it down for condos. They've been talking to them for months, even before your art space idea." My coffee went cold in my hands. "It's my house, Mia. Legally mine. When were they going to tell me?" She looked away. "They thought they could pressure you into giving up." Everything clicked. The locks, the trash bags, the gas leak, the beam. This wasn't just about family pride or my plans. It was about money, raw and ugly. My parents were willing to destroy me for a payday, and they weren't stopping. That night, driving to Rachel's office with documents, I noticed a car tailing me, its headlights too close. When I sped up, it matched me, weaving through traffic. At a red light, it pulled alongside, the driver's face obscured. My heart raced as I floored it, losing them in a maze of side streets. Was this paranoia, or were my parents hiring people to scare me? By the time I reached Rachel's office, I was shaking. She took one look at me and said, "We're adding harassment to the injunction. Document everything." But the hits kept coming. At work, Greg called me in again. "The San Francisco client got an anonymous tip about instability in your personal life," he said, his tone clipped. "They're waffling. Fix this, Claire, or you're out." My savings were bleeding, legal fees, hotel stays, replacing stolen essentials. Zoe's couch was my lifeline, but her boyfriend was getting annoyed, and I saw the strain in her eyes. The morning of the injunction hearing, I dressed carefully. Navy blazer, low heels, hair in a neat bun. As Rachel had advised, look like the victim you are, but strong. We were outside the courthouse when my phone rang with an unknown number. "Claire Donovan?" a man said. "Officer Reynolds, Seattle PD. We need you at the station regarding stolen property." My blood ran cold. "What property?" "Jewelry and documents reported by Ellen and David Donovan." I handed the phone to Rachel, who shut it down fast. "My client's in a hearing. Those items are hers, left by her grandmother. We'll address your false report later." Inside the courtroom, I saw my parents for the first time since the lockout. Mom avoided my gaze, her jaw tight. Dad glared, his face flushed. Mia sat behind them, looking miserable. Rachel presented the deed, the will, and photos of my belongings in trash bags. Their attorney, Victor Grant, a slick man with shark eyes, claimed I'd abandoned the house and my parents were securing it. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with gray curls, wasn't buying it. "The will is clear," she said. "Miss Donovan owns the property. Changing locks was illegal." She granted the injunction, ordering my access restored and my belongings returned within 24 hours. It should have been a win, but it felt hollow. As we left, I heard Dad mutter to Mom, "This isn't over." Outside, the police were waiting, questioning me about stolen jewelry in front of passers-by. Humiliation burned my cheeks as Rachel intervened. Back at Zoe's, I found another ex-post from Mom, this one with a photo of Vivian's house and the caption, "Some people forget their roots for greed." The comments were brutal, strangers calling me a monster. My phone pinged with a text from an unknown number. "Back off, or you'll lose more than a house." I was alone on Zoe's couch that night, the city's lights blurring through the window, when a package arrived from Margaret Wells. Inside was a letter from Vivian, emails between my parents and a developer, and a USB drive. I plugged it into Zoe's laptop and Vivian's voice filled the room, steady and clear. "I'm recording this because my daughter and son-in-law are pressuring me to sell my home. They've threatened to put me in a nursing home. My decision to leave the house to Claire is mine, made freely." Tears streamed down my face. Vivian had known. She'd protected me even after she was gone. But the package held one more surprise. A key, small and tarnished, with a note in Vivian's handwriting. "For the attic, you'll know when to use it." I'd never seen an attic door in the house. What was she hiding? And why now? As I clutched the key, my phone buzzed with another anonymous text. "You're not safe. They're watching." I locked Zoe's door, my heart pounding, and wondered what secrets and dangers lay ahead. What would you do if your family turned against you? Not just with words, but with actions that threatened your life. Share your thoughts below. If this story hit home, like and subscribe. Sometimes, the people who should love you most are the ones who hurt you deepest. But I'm not giving up. Not now, not ever. The key in my hand felt heavier than it should, its tarnished edges biting into my palm as I stared at the anonymous text on my phone. "You're not safe. They're watching." Zoe's Fremont apartment was dark, the hum of Seattle's nightlife filtering through the window, but I couldn't shake the chill that had settled in my bones. I was Claire Donovan, 29, creative director at Vantage Creative, and just days ago, I'd been locked out of my own home, the historic craftsman house in Capitol Hill that my grandmother Vivian Harper had left me. My parents, Ellen and David, had changed the locks, dumped my life in trash bags, and launched a vicious campaign to paint me as a traitor to our family's legacy. But Vivian's package, her letter, emails, recording, and this mysterious key had ignited something in me. Fear, yes, but also a fierce determination. They wanted a fight, they'd get one. I tucked the key into my pocket and locked Zoe's door, double-checking the deadbolt. Sleep was impossible, my mind racing with questions. What was in the attic? Who was watching me? Was the gas leak at the house an accident? Or had my parents crossed a line into something darker? The beam that nearly crushed me, the black SUV, the car chase? They couldn't all be coincidences. I opened my laptop, the glow harshed against the dark, and replayed Vivian's recording. Her voice, steady at 94, cut through the silence. My daughter and son-in-law have threatened to institutionalize me if I don't sell the house. My decision to leave it to Claire is mine, made freely. Tears pricked my eyes. Vivian had known their greed, their cruelty, and she'd trusted me to protect her legacy. I wouldn't let her down. The next morning, I met Rachel Nguyen at her downtown office, the Seattle skyline framed behind her desk. She listened as I described the package, her sharp eyes narrowing at the mention of the key. "This recording is gold," she said, tapping the USB drive. "It proves Vivian's intent in their coercion. The emails show premeditation. They were plotting with developers before she died, were filing for a permanent injunction and adding harassment and emotional distress claims." I handed her the key and note. "Vivian left this. She said I'd know when to use it, but I've never seen an attic door in the house." Rachel frowned, turning the key over. Could be a metaphor, or something literal. Either way, don't go poking around alone. Not after the gas leak and that car chase. I nodded, but my skin prickled. Rachel was right. My parents were playing dirty. Their X campaign had gone viral. Mom's posts accusing me of desecrating Vivian's house, racking up thousands of retweets. Neighbors I'd known since childhood now crossed the street to avoid me, and hostile notes kept appearing at Zoe's, "Leave Capitol Hill alone," and "You're no Harper." At work, the pressure was crushing. My boss, Greg, had called me in, again, his voice tight. "The San Francisco client's getting cold feet, Claire. Anonymous tips about your legal troubles aren't helping. Get your house in order." My savings were hemorrhaging. Legal fees, hotel stays, replacing stolen essentials like my work laptop, which still hadn't turned up. And now, the police were sniffing around, thanks to my parents' false theft report about Vivian's sapphire necklace and the original will. But the house was mine again, at least on paper. The judge's injunction had forced my parents to restore my access, and that afternoon, I drove to Capitol Hill with a locksmith and a police escort, Rachel's precaution. Zoe came too, her pink hair a splash of defiance against the gray drizzle. The new deadbolt gleamed, a reminder of my parents' betrayal. As the locksmith worked, a neighbor, Mrs. Callahan, watched from her porch, her lips pursed. "Used to think you were a nice girl, Claire," she called. "Vivian would be ashamed," Zoe snapped back. "Mind your own business, Karen." But I just stared at the ground, my face burning. The lock clicked open, and I stepped inside, bracing myself. The sight hit me like a punch. The house wasn't just empty, it was violated. Furniture was overturned, cushions slashed, and the walls were scrawled with graffiti. "Traitor" and "greedy bitch" in red paint that dripped like blood. My grandmother's study, where we'd spent countless hours sketching, was a wreck. Her desk splintered, drawers missing, books torn apart. The kitchen, where I'd nearly died from the gas leak, smelled of bleach as if someone had tried to erase their tracks. Zoe gasped, her hand on my arm. "Claire, this is sick." The police officer, a young guy named Torres, took photos, his face grim. File a vandalism report. This is way past a family spat. Rachel, clicking away with her phone, said, "This is contempt of court. They were ordered to return your belongings, not destroy the place." I wandered to the living room, my dream gallery space, and found a single item left behind. A framed photo of Vivian and me, cracked down the middle. I clutched it, tears blurring my vision. "They took everything," I whispered. "Her necklace, her journal, everything." Officer Torres suggested filing a theft report, the irony bitter. My parents had accused me of stealing while looting the house themselves. That night, back at Zoe's, I couldn't stop shaking. The violation wasn't just physical, it was emotional, a deliberate attempt to erase me from Vivian's legacy. Zoe poured us wine, her voice fierce. "They're scared, Claire. They know you're fighting back, and they're lashing out." I nodded, but fear gnawed at me. What if the gas leak wasn't a scare? What if the next accident succeeded? And what was in that attic? I needed answers, but Rachel's warning echoed, "Don't go alone." The next day, I got a call from Margaret Wells, Vivian's cousin from Tacoma. Her voice was warm but urgent. "Claire, I've got something you need to see. Vivian gave me things to keep safe, things she didn't trust your parents with. Can you come tomorrow?" I agreed, my curiosity spiking. Margaret had hinted Vivian foresaw this fight. Had she left more than the package? I told Zoe, who insisted on driving me. "No way you're going alone after that car chase," she said, her eyes hard. But danger found me first. That evening I was walking to Zoe's from a nearby coffee shop when I heard footsteps behind me. I glanced back. A man in a hoodie, face shadowed, kept pace. My pulse raced. I sped up, turning down a side street, but he followed, closer now. I broke into a run, my boots slipping on wet pavement, and ducked into a crowded bar. From the window, I saw him pause, then melt into the dark. I called Zoe, my voice shaking. "Someone's following me. I don't know who." She was there in 10 minutes, her car screeching to a stop. "This is getting out of hand," she said, gripping the wheel. "Your parents are hiring people, Claire. Or worse." At Margaret's the next morning, the tension followed me. Her Tacoma cottage was cozy, filled with photos of her and Vivian as young women, their smiles carefree. Over tea, she explained, "Vivian knew Ellen and David were after the house years ago. They pressured her to sell when Capitol Hill prices skyrocketed. When she refused, David suggested having her declared incompetent." My teacup rattled in its saucer. Incompetent? Vivian was sharper than all of us. Margaret nodded, her face grim. "She was furious. That's why she changed her will to you." She handed me another envelope. Inside was a second letter from Vivian. "Claire, if you're reading this, my fears have come true. Trust Margaret. She knows the truth." There were more emails. My parents negotiating with a developer named Triton Holdings, offering the house for $3 million, 0 cents, to build condos. And a small notebook, Vivian's handwriting detailing visits from a consultant David hired to evaluate her mental state. "I'm not crazy," she'd written. "They're greedy." But the real bombshell was a video file on the USB. Margaret played it on her laptop and Vivian's face filled the screen, her eyes fierce. "If my daughter or son-in-law contest my will, know this. They tried to force me to sell my home. David threatened to put me in a facility. Ellen said I'd never see my grandchildren again. I'm leaving my house to Claire because she's the only one I trust." I sobbed, covering my mouth. Vivian had faced their cruelty alone, protecting me even then. Margaret squeezed my hand. "There's more, but it's at the house. Vivian hid things she didn't want them finding." I showed her the key. "The attic?" She nodded, her eyes serious. "Be careful, Claire. They're desperate now." On the drive back, Zoe was quiet, her knuckles white on the wheel. "Your parents are monsters," she said finally. "What else are they hiding?" I called Rachel, updating her with Margaret's evidence. "This is a game changer," she said. "I'm filing for punitive damages, but Claire, watch your back. Desperate people do desperate things." Her words hung over me as I returned to work, where Greg was waiting with bad news. "The San Francisco client pulled out," he said, his face hard. "Anonymous emails claimed you're embroiled in a theft scandal. We're on thin ice, Claire." My stomach dropped. The police report, my parents' lie about the necklace, was leaking into my professional life. I promised to fix it, but my confidence was crumbling. That night, I couldn't resist. Against Rachel's advice, I drove to the house alone, the key burning a hole in my pocket. The vandalism was still fresh, graffiti glaring under my flashlight, broken glass crunching underfoot. I climbed the stairs searching for an attic access. In the second-floor hallway, behind a faded tapestry, I found it. A narrow door, its lock matching the key. My hands shook as I turned it, the door creaking open to reveal a steep staircase. The air was musty, heavy with secrets. At the top was a small room, lit by a single bulb. Boxes lined the walls, labeled in Vivian's hand. Family records, letters, photos. I opened one and found yellowed documents, deeds, birth certificates, and a sealed envelope addressed to me. Inside was another note. "Claire, the house holds more than memories. Look for the safe. Trust no one but Margaret." A safe? Where? Before I could search, I heard a crash downstairs. My heart stopped. I killed the light, crouching in the dark. Footsteps echoed below, slow and deliberate. I gripped my phone, 911 on speed dial, but the signal was weak. A man's voice muttered, "She's not here." Another answered, "Check upstairs." Panic surged. I crept to the attic door, easing it shut, and wedged a box against it. The footsteps climbed the stairs, stopping outside. The doorknob rattled. I held my breath, sweat beading on my neck. Then a phone rang, and the first man cursed. "Boss says abort. Cops are nearby." They retreated, their steps fading, but I stayed frozen until silence returned. I stumbled out, calling Rachel. Someone broke in, 2 men looking for me. She was furious. "I told you not to go alone. File a police report, now." Officer Torres took my statement, but found no evidence, no fingerprints, no cameras. "Could be random," he said, but his eyes said otherwise. I crashed at Zoe's, the envelope clutched tight. What was in the safe, and who was boss? The next morning, Mia texted, asking to meet. Against my better judgment, I agreed, choosing a crowded Capitol Hill cafe. She looked haggard, her eyes red. "I was scared, Claire," she said, stirring her latte. "Mom and Dad, they're out of control. They've been meeting with Triton Holdings for years. They wanted the house before Vivian died." I leaned forward, my voice low. "Did they hire people to scare me? The gas leak? The break-in?" She shook her head, but her eyes darted away. "I don't know." "But Dad's been on the phone with someone shady. I heard him say she'll crack soon." I left the cafe shaken. Mia's cowardice stung, but her words confirmed my fears. My parents weren't just greedy, they were dangerous. Rachel called with an update. Victor Grant, their attorney, had requested a settlement meeting. "They're spooked," she said. "They know we have the recording. But don't let your guard down." I agreed, but the anonymous texts kept coming. "Stop digging," or each one tightened the vice around my chest. Then came the media storm. Ellen's ex-campaign caught the attention of a local news outlet, running a story titled, "Family Feud Over Historic Seattle Home." It painted me as a selfish millennial profiting off my grandmother's legacy, quoting anonymous sources close to my parents. Reporters camped outside Zoe's apartment, their cameras flashing as I ducked inside. At work, Greg was livid. "This is a PR nightmare, Claire. Fix it or you're on leave." My promotion to executive creative director, once a sure thing, was slipping away. But I wasn't alone. Zoe organized a Reclaim the House Day, rallying friends to help me clean the vandalism. We scrubbed graffiti, swept glass, and saged every room, the smoke curling like a prayer. Over pizza on the porch, they toasted me to Claire, who's tougher than her parents' bullshit. I laughed, the first real laugh in weeks, but the missing necklace and journal haunted me. Where were they, and what was in that safe? The settlement meeting was set for a sterile downtown conference room. Rachel prepped me. "Stay calm. Let me handle Victor. We're holding all the cards." My parents looked smaller than I remembered. Mom's makeup unable to hide her exhaustion. Dad's shoulders slumped. Mia sat beside them, avoiding my gaze. Victor started with a conciliatory tone. "My clients will return all items, acknowledge your ownership, and pay legal fees in exchange for dropping additional claims." Rachel smirked. "Not enough. Claire's suffered financial loss, emotional distress, and a smear campaign. Let's talk real compensation." She played Vivian's recording, and the room froze. Mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Dad's face went ashen. Victor called a recess, his jaw tight. When they returned, he offered $100,000, 0 cents in damages, a public retraction, and a no-contact order for the house. Rachel pushed for more, securing a clause requiring them to disclose all Triton Holdings communications. I signed, my hand steady, but inside I was hollow. This wasn't victory. It was survival. As we left, Mia approached, her voice breaking. "I should have backed you, Claire. I was a coward." I steadied her, the sister I'd once shared everything with. "You chose them, Mia. That's hard to forget, but maybe we can talk. Coffee next week?" She nodded, tears in her eyes, and I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe not all was lost. That night, I returned to the house, alone but unafraid. The cleaning had helped, but it still felt wounded. In Vivian's study, I found a returned book with a cryptic note in her handwriting. "The safe is behind the hearth. Trust your heart." My pulse raced. The fireplace in the living room had always seemed ordinary, but I pried at the bricks until one shifted, revealing a small safe. My hands shook as I tried combinations. Vivian's birthday, mine, our anniversary of painting together. On the last try, it clicked open. Inside was the sapphire necklace, its stones glinting, and Vivian's journal, its pages filled with sketches and stories. But there was more. A letter, sealed, addressed to me. "Claire," it read, "if you've found this, you've faced their worst. The house holds a secret, a trust fund hidden from my children for you to preserve our legacy. Margaret has the details. You're stronger than you know." I clutched the letter, sobbing, relief and grief crashing over me. Vivian had seen it all, and she'd given me everything I needed to win. The gallery opened weeks later, a triumph of light and color. Seattle artists filled the space, their work reflecting themes of home and resilience. Neighbors who'd shunned me came, some apologizing, others curious. "Vivian would love this," one said, and I smiled, feeling her presence. Ellen showed up uninvited, her compliment, "It's beautiful," laced with manipulation. I thanked her, keeping my distance. She'd never own me again. A final twist came in a letter from Triton Holdings, vowing to reclaim the land, hinting at ties to my parents. And an anonymous donor funded the gallery's first year, their note cryptic, "For Vivian's vision." Who were they? What did they know? As I stood in Vivian's study, her quote from Maya Angelou framed on the desk, "You may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them." I knew the fight wasn't over, but I was ready. "What secrets are your family hiding? Have you ever had to fight for what's yours against those you loved? Share below. If this story moved you, like and subscribe. Our wounds can become our strength, but we don't have to face them alone.